This is Infection, the survival podcast, recorded live on Tuesday, March the 22nd, 2022, episode 375. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Welcome to another edition of Infection, the survival podcast. Infection is your source for the latest information on survival video games. My name is Nick Craig. You can check out my daily political antics by visiting nickcraig.com. You can also download the Wilmington's Morning News podcast in your favorite podcast app. Of course, our website, infectionpodcast.com. Can't do this whole thing alone. Joining me as he does each and every week, wearing his State of Decay shirt from PAX in years past, Brian with an I, Aldridge. Hello, Mr. Brian. Hope you're doing well.
Hello. I am doing well. And actually, we found out whether or not we're going to have a boy or a girl, but we're keeping it a secret for another week. So next week, I'll tell you.
Well, you can't
because we're actually telling our family this weekend. I'm not going to leak it here and then.
Why not?
I haven't told anybody.
Well, okay. So, just Brian, remember, nobody listens to the podcast, so it's like you're telling nobody to
ever.
Yeah.
It's like writing in a journal.
Yeah, exactly. Nobody ever sees it, so It doesn't really matter. You could say it and you could yell it scream it to the skies. It won't matter.
Well, next week, I'll let you know, and we'll see how that goes.
Okay.
But of course, if you want to find me, at Brian Aldridge on Gab, Parler, Getter, maybe Truth Social, who knows, whatever comes our way. If you want to go check out my blog, biteoftech.com. And of course, as Nick said, go to our website, infectionpodcast.com. And if you go to the right-hand side and click join our server on Discord, we've had a lot of people playing Ark. Seems like Ark has put out a lot of updates recently. We've got 10 maps on there, getting a lot of people very active in Ark on a regular basis, a very active community. So if you're interested in that, join the server. You can jump into the community of the Ark channel and get started. There's instructions. And there you go. There's a list of all the servers. We also have in there a news channel. If you want to submit a topic, perhaps the games is coming up that you don't think we're going to see, or we're missing the information about it, go ahead and throw that link in there, or put some information you think is relevant. We'll review that before the show, and that way you can be a part of what we do. If you want to catch the video forms, we have on there Twitch, YouTube, BitChute, and DLive. Those are live and after the fact. And then if you want to do the audio only on the road or something like that, we don't do it live, but you can get that on almost any kind of device. So just go to the lower right-hand side, pick whatever's most convenient for you. And while you're listening, I really encourage you, perhaps there's something that you wanted to watch, you were listening and you couldn't see it, just go to our show notes and you can click on the particular episode that you were listening to, and we got links either to the video player in there, we have an audio player again, or you can click the link that shows the video that we were showing during the live show. So very helpful, a lot of good, useful links in there. I'm starting to include a lot more like source links and things like that, just so we get, because a lot of times you'll get PC Gamer and then they'll be reporting on someone else's news. So
yeah,
seems like try to find where it came from so that we can always refer back to that.
The source document. Yes, sir.
Yes.
So kind of an interesting week gaming-wise. Not really a whole lot of specific game news, but I did want to start off with this article. Speaking of PC Gamer, I caught this article earlier this morning. I was scrolling through PC Gamer because I hate myself, and I found this article
Glutton for punishment
about Guild Wars 2. Which is not a game that has been out for a significant amount of time.
A long time.
Yeah, it's been out for, I think I looked up, 2012 is when Guild Wars 2 came out. Now, why am I bringing this up? Well, because as they are working through their third expansion that came out a few weeks ago, their game director, Josh Davis, said, our growth over the last 3 years is largely driven by new players coming to the game and the return of veteran players. A lot of services they saw, of course, during COVID-19, but they have seen the highest, their player count has more than doubled in the last 3 years. A 12-year-old game, game from 2012, a 10-year-old game, is has seen its player counts double in the last 3 years. And we often think about when a game kind of, after the first couple of years, traditionally it kind of fades off, and MMOs are a little bit different. But this is very interesting, Brian. This game, with so many other MMOs recently coming out, obviously right now, Elder Ring or whatever it's called is incredibly popular. You've got Amazon's new MMO that Amazon's got 2 MMOs that people are playing. But Guild Wars 2 has seen a huge jump in the player base. And I just find that I found it to be very interesting. There's not really a whole lot more to deconstruct.
Well,
but it's very
personally,
interesting.
I think it's probably a lot of those WoW players. You got to think of a lot of people that WoW brought in and got to be their community are the people that are more likely to be offended and leave when they don't view at them as doing what they think they should do. I think that there's a lot of people that just because of the politics and the things that were happening over at Blizzard at the time, had a lot of people quit playing WoW. And I think that they still want to play. And this is one of the only games for an MMO that looks fairly current, has a lot of content, and has a decent player base. Because a lot of the MMOs that we think of are either really old or they're really new and they don't have very much content. Right? We had a big break during the WoW years, and this is one of the only ones that really put out content and tried to grow in spite of WoW. And WoW declined a little bit after that.
Yeah, there's another article over here. It's an opinion piece, so I'm not going to link to it. It just says Guild War 2 still has better quests than any other MMO, and it's obviously a guy that seems to understand this stuff. And
I just think it's the natural place for people to gravitate when they're not playing WoW. If they want to play an MMO, and for some reason they're not going to play WoW, they're like, for whatever reason, this is probably one of the better bets for them to go to get the kind of thing they're wanting. If they like to do quests, this has a lot of quests, just like WoW. It'll keep you busy all the time. And there's PvP to it. I don't know how competitive it really is, but there's a lot of people who play that.
I think what I took away from this was that it doesn't really matter how old the game is. Content is still king, Brian. And if you've got good content in your game, even after 10 years, does not mean it is necessarily over with. So hopefully maybe this will be maybe a wake-up call to some other developers that, hey, there's more to this than just getting a game out there, keeping it good.
And maybe 6 months worth of content updates. And
then you're done.
Well, Cyberpunk, perfect example.
Example.
I know they've been putting out a lot of bug fixes and making it playable, but what new content have they really put in to make it to where a person that's played a lot of it, I didn't do all the different endings, but I played through the main quest line and then a bunch of the side quests. What's new for me to go and check out? Like, have you revamped anything to make it feel different other than bug fixes? Have you put in new levels? Have you made more buildings enterable? Like what? More quests? I haven't heard any of that, of major things being added other than things still being fixed. And that's a game that why would people go back now? Why would people go discover it if they feel like there's nothing new is ever going to come of it? If they see a lot of content, they'll go. Or if they see things being added on a regular basis, they'll go there. I think there's been a long while since we've had an MMO that's either continuously adding content or has a lot of content to use. So
Jonesy,
these new ones, hopefully they learn and keep putting content in.
Jonesy in the chat says, I've been playing Cyberpunk a lot this last week. Actually, it's really worth a replay. Yeah, I think I need to probably just restart the game and restart that. He said there are more quests, and they did add some content in their update they did a couple of months ago, but it went literally a year between launch to where they got it to over the past couple of months. So that's been very interesting to watch as well. This just came up in the chat, and I didn't plan on getting it to this early, but I think it's probably not a bad time to talk about it, Brian. Overwatch. Overwatch 2, they have a beta that is expected to go live on April the 26th, and you can go to their website and sign up. I don't particularly care about talking about the beta, but what I do care about is this interesting article about the Overwatch League, which is their esport league. They are 2 months away from the start of their 5th season of the Overwatch League, and they do not have a single sponsor for the event,
Yep.
which goes to, I think, show
Politics.
a couple of things.
Economy.
Something going, the economy, but more than anything else, it seems like Overwatch has not really, even though it seems as if it was designed to be an esports game and has a lot of those esports elements, the Overwatch League has never really taken off in comparison to other games like League and things like that. I just found it interesting that they don't have a single sponsor and they're ready to go. They've got their tournament launching in 2 months. Not a single corporate sponsor.
Yeah, and it's kind of sad, but some of it plays to this game personally. There's not enough variation for me to have it be something that's played, like on television and things like that on a regular basis. Mm-hmm. I see too much repetition in the maps, too much repetition in the characters. Where League of Legends was something that there was a lot of variety and people that were really into it, like the different matchups between all these different types of characters. And if you really knew the characters, like you could get into it more. I just think there's some games that are like that. This is fun to play. I think it's fun to watch once in a while, but I wouldn't want to watch it all the time because it's a game that has it's kind of like what's the other one that like PH plays all the time? CS:GO. That one,
but CS:GO is incredibly popular as an esport.
Yeah, very popular, and that one there's a lot of repetition. But is that one going to be one that they do on TV on a regular basis? I think there's going to have to be a new version of esport that has a little more variety to get the more average viewer to watch these things.
And that's exactly what it comes down to when you talk about esports broadening its scope and becoming more of a general consumption thing. I mean, there's been Call of Duty esports and things like that for well over a decade now, but it was never anything that, let's just call it what it is, normal people watched. And that has not been, that's been something that these various leagues, I think Rocket League has done this a little bit as well. But very interesting that even with the announcement that the Overwatch 2 beta starts here in just over a month, they don't have a single corporate sponsor on board for their Overwatch, 5th season of Overwatch. Pretty remarkable.
Now, do you think that one thing? Do you think how much of that do you think is economy?
I don't
we
think
could say, it's all politics or whatever. You think that people would be willing, if whatever was wrong with it wasn't happening, that people would be willing to throw money on it?
Yeah, I don't think from a company standpoint they see the need to throw money behind it. Is kind of how I took it away. I'm not sure that it is necessarily the politics behind Blizzard, and I don't think it's got anything to do with that. I mean, I'm sure a little bit of it does, but to me it was just okay, you're a company. Are you willing to shell out money to get in front of the same consumer base that you're already in front of? I mean, that's what it really comes down to. Yeah. So it's interesting.
Yeah. Hey, let's cover one more thing with Activision Blizzard, because they're going to be having that shareholders vote whether or not to allow the Microsoft buyout, because I think a lot of people assume this is just going to happen. They assume, it's been in the news, they've reported on it, this is something that's just going to happen. But no, April 28th is when the vote's going to happen, and this should be what determines whether, the first steps, because then it still has to be approved at some levels
by the FEC, the federal or the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission,
Federal Trade Commission, and things like that. So that's still going to happen. But I think it has to pass this first. I would assume that the shareholders are going to get money off of this. They're going to come out better in the end because of this sale. So I would be surprised if they wouldn't do it.
Yeah, I believe it's $95. I believe they're doing $95 a share. I just checked because, Brian, I will actually be part of this vote. I believe it'll be every shareholding member. I own a couple shares of Activision Blizzard.
Oh, nice.
Microsoft is planning on doing a $95 cash buyout for the stock, and it's currently trading at $79.50 as of end of close today. So yeah, if you're a shareholder, $95 for a sellout is not a bad price at all. So I'll have to put that on my calendar so that I can cast my. I know my vote is very important. Everybody will be and waiting.
I
I
know.
believe I own 5 shares of Activision Blizzard, so I know folks will be patiently awaiting for my vote. So I'm not going to tell you what I'm going to do yet, but I'll just tell you that I'm going to be voting.
All right. I'm sure. Hey, and soon we'll have to disclose. I'm sure they'll be like, do we have stock in any of these game companies we talk about? I'm sure they'll get to some point where they'll put some legislation.
I don't give any financial advice.
We try not to. Other than don't spend your money on certain games.
Don't buy.
Save your money. Put your money back in your wallet.
Don't buy Pipe Dreams. Wait for the game to come out and buy it once it's actually available. So that is interesting. Exactly. We'll continue to follow that. Where do you want to take us from here, Mr. Brian?
Well, okay, there was an announcement from CD Projekt regarding a Witcher game. So let's talk about. Let's go to the announcement really quick. Warning: there may be an age wall it has you go past, but I'll go ahead and start talking about it. So they're announcing a new installment, or so the next installment of the Witcher series of video games. So this is going to be, first of all, not using Red Engine.
Oh, okay.
What's your guess on what engine they will be using?
It's got to be UE5.
It is Unreal Engine 5. So Witcher has been using their own engine for a while. And this, I would assume this is them making, because Cyberpunk's on Red Engine.
Yeah, which is their own proprietary engine. All right, CD Projekt Red, it's their own engine.
Yes, and they said this is an exciting moment as we're moving from Red Engine to Unreal Engine 5, beginning a multi-year strategic partnership with Epic Games. It covers not only licensing but technical development of the Unreal Engine 5, as well as potential future versions of Unreal Engine where relevant. We'll closely collaborate with Epic Games developers with the primary goal being to help tailor the engine for open world experiences. At this point, no further details regarding the game, such as development timeframe or release date, are available. Red Engine is the technology which powers Cyberpunk 2077. It's still being used for the development of the upcoming Cyberpunk 2077 expansion. So there you go. And that answers the question about the Cyberpunk expansion. So more content there as well.
To me, this just goes to show that let's set the groundwork for this. In years past, go back a decade, pretty much your only option was to make your own engine. I mean, if you were a large developer like Rockstar, like CD Projekt Red, there was obviously Unreal and stuff existed, but it wasn't to where it is today. So you built your own engine. I mean, look at Daybreak. I mean, they had their own engine because that's just what you did when you were doing game development in the mid 2000s. You had to. This was the only way it was done.
Exactly, especially if you wanted it to look a certain way or to do something different than what the Unreal Engine did, the Unreal game at that time did. It made a difference. So now they would go, and that's why some of those games visually look so much better, because their development was better than the engines that were available on the market. What GTA did was make an incredible engine and then put a bunch of money into scripting and acting and voice acting and all these animation, all the things, and made an incredible engine. But finally we have engines catching up and getting ahead of some of those private in-house engines that we've seen. So which I think it's awesome, because the in-house engines can't keep up anymore with what they're doing with things like Unreal Engine and Unity.
That was exactly my point, is for you now as a developer to have people on, I mean, you literally would have people that were just in charge of the engine. And now essentially you can reallocate those people instead of working on building the engine. Now they can take Unreal and then tweak it to do the things that you want it to do. Exactly. Yeah. Well, that's what,
and they're going to be coordinating with the Unreal team, so that if there's a bug they find, they'll be coordinating to actually fix it in the engine, so that they're not doing a patch on top of the engine. It'll make a big difference.
Do you think this is do you think this trend will continue with companies that have previously done their own?
I feel like we've been kind of saying, at least I feel like I've said this here and there over at least the last year or two, that I think all these proprietary engines are going to be dropping off. They just can't keep up. They can't keep up with the ray tracing and all the different little features. I mean, if you look at what Unreal Engine has done in the past year and a half, let's say a year and a half of public releases, not what they're doing
Okay.
in house, but the things that they're releasing to the public. They've done things where you have physics of things that just crumble and look realistic breaking. So you can have a building that falls apart, in real time, and it's not all pre-planned exactly. Um, you've got what they've done with the incredible detail, unlimited detail in Unreal Engine 5 alone. You have it to where they can just throw models with tons of poly count, and it will display them without a huge impact. Things like this that were just we didn't see them coming. They released them and bam, it's like, okay, that's really cool. I wasn't expecting that. Uh, these are the things that GTA's engine and all those are working towards and constantly trying to hit. And you've got an engine that's there right now, and if you can push their development and keep them there, you'll be better off in the end because the engine should continue to improve and keep ahead of what all the other ones are doing.
Precisely. So I think I agree with you. I think this is a trend that is going to continue as it
Yep.
just makes so much more sense for them to just essentially farm this stuff out. I mean, let's just call it what it is. If somebody else is already doing, 90% of what you're going to do with your engine, why not use that other engine and then, deal with the 10% internally instead of having to deal with 100% of it internally. So it's pretty remarkable to see how far the Unreal Engine has come and how, I mean, you're talking about this Witcher game is going to be massive, Brian. I mean, you're talking about these are some of the most some of the most incredible open world games that have ever been developed.
Yep.
That's
and
huge.
this is what Epic likes to do. I mean, if you look what Epic does, they take on projects to push features of their engine. I mean, this is what I've been saying this for a long time. Their games are a test of their engine. They use the games to improve their engine because they know their engine is the moneymaker. Their game's temporarily a moneymaker. Their long-term moneymaker is the engine. Because regardless of what happens with battle royales and all these things, that engine's going to keep going as long as they keep pumping that money into it. And their game's doing really well too. So lucky them. But this is their bread and butter, and they're going to keep pushing this forward. And Unreal Engine 5 is pushing the limits. I think Unity's finally kind of going off to the side and giving up a little bit with trying to keep up with certain features. They put out their like a demo reel, and it was doing like live capture and stuff like that was what they were featuring. It just they're not pushing ahead of this at all. They're going to probably go more mobile and all those other things that they do really well. And I think that we'll finally have Unreal Engine, which is going to make it easier for developers to kind of to meet all these requirements. Because if as long as it's compatible with Unreal Engine, it's going to be compatible with the Switch. It's going to be compatible with PlayStation. You can build it for everything. I think it's going to make that install base much less non-compatible, buggy, because you're building it on an engine that's now being tested on major platforms constantly. Big releases, top AAA games are being released on this. And so if there's a major bug, it should be caught quickly. And that's the beauty of something that's big and not in-house because it's public. You can go to the game and say, hey, here's a bug. You can go to Epic and say, hey, here's a bug. The in-house ones, you can go report it, but usually nothing comes from it.
Precisely. So turning the conversation now, I want to talk about Steam for a few minutes here, Brian, and not about the Steam Deck, as that has made its way into the public sphere. Yeah. But I've caught an article on XDA developers, which handles things big. It's big on Android and things like that. The headline is Steam on Chrome OS is now available on select Chromebooks. And I found this to be very interesting as we talk about the expansion of SteamOS with the Steam Deck. They are now apparently pushing to these other kinds of devices. So as it sits right now, Steam will be available on Chrome OS in the dev channel of Chrome OS as an early alpha build, and it requires at least 8 gigs of RAM for it to run, and They do note that it is still very buggy. There is details on how to install it, but this
Is this using that service?
is it using the
using that
Proton
service
layer?
for compatibility?
I'm sure it absolutely will be. But
I would think it would have to. But
yeah, now it's important to note that Chrome OS, and when you say Chromebook, I think the initial impression is that you need to it is a cheap $200 device. And yes, there are cheap $200 Chromebooks, but you can also get a $500 or $600 Chromebook, Brian, that is essentially the same specs as a decent Windows laptop that just has Chrome OS. So it's pretty remarkable to see now that Steam is going to be adding Chrome OS support for this, as they will now be plunging deeper and deeper into the Linux ecosystem, which is what they're doing.
Well, and also you have that Google Play games, which
you can download Android apps.
It's going to be in Windows. Yeah, that's going to be in Windows. I'm assuming that there's a good chance that you'll kind of see this going back and forth to where this kind of gaming is going to be, you'll be playing these Steam games on there, and then you'll be able to play probably Android games on there, which has a ton of games. And if you're doing it on a lightweight device or a small, light powered, maybe not lightweight and how it feels, but lightly powered device, this is going to open up the doors quite a bit. Now, the big devices will be able to play, the whole Steam library, but I think you'll probably get kind of subgroups of ones that'll play on these little devices that are more things that you don't think of as a gaming device.
And when you look at the kind of games, you can look at, you're going to be, of course, talking about the older generation of games, but there are so many, 2D side scrollers and things like that are available on Steam that are more than capable of running with integrated either Intel or AMD graphics on a Chromebook at 1080p. And you can even look at games like Portal, that came out in the Xbox 360 days, and Team Fortress and things like that would be more than capable of running on a device like this. So it will be, I might have to I'd have to look at the specs. I don't think my old Chromebook has 8 gigs of RAM. But this would be very cool as Steam continues to, I guess, open the market to other individuals. This is just a continuation of that.
Well, and I think Steam is seeing a path for staying relevant. Like I think that there was finally a realization that they might lose their relevancy with the things going on with Microsoft, the Game Pass, and I think that this kind of what they realized making a portable device, and then what they could do with it to make it to where gaming could be available everywhere, and that could be their gimmick. It's making it so that you can play your games wherever you want because of, what they're doing with technology to kind of bring it to you, just like Netflix brings you very efficiently a video to your, to your TV. They're finding out a way to get your games to play efficiently through your system on these little lightweight devices. And I think that's going to be their niche. I think they're going to put everything into this and get it to where you feel like you can almost play Steam on anything.
Well, then
good.
Then it begs the question: how long until you can play Steam games on a phone?
I bet you it's around the corner. I bet you that if depending on how they do it, there's a lot of phones, there's a lot of variations, but I bet you from a certain version, especially if they can get it to where they can get something into the Linux the Android operating system part of it, something that built in compatibility to where they're not doing it halfway, but they're doing it for real. Then
pretty cool to see. I
think it will be there.
We'll have a link in our show notes on infectionpodcast.com with the command that you need to put in, which is actually funny. It's the command to run this is insert_coin, and then there's a string after that you type in. So they played around with it a little bit to make it a little bit more techie and nerdy, but that is available. And they do say that Google has noted that on higher end Chromebooks, games using the Steam compatibility layer, including Elder Scrolls Skyrim and Fallout 4 could work on higher end Chromebooks. So you're talking about some games that traditionally you would need a pretty decent PC to run. Now possibly running on a device like that. So pretty cool. We'll follow this as it evolves over the next probably couple of months for sure.
Yeah. Hey, I think we should talk about Microsoft here for
Sure.
a little bit because there was something that happened here very recently. I think in the last couple of days, but they had a data breach happen, and so
Wow.
this
Okay.
they got quite a bit of data. They got some source code, and they've actually released some source code. So
Hmm.
they've leaked at least 37 gigabytes of Microsoft's what looks like Microsoft source code for things like Bing, some different Bing features, um, some of their Cortana things, things that I'm sure they didn't intend to. And I don't know if this is everything, but this is showing the uncompressed archive containing what looks like about 37 gigabytes worth of source code. So there was an investigation into this. Microsoft's trying to figure out, how they get in. This type of group, what they'll do is pay people that are insiders in companies to do things for them for money, or whatever, Bitcoin. Who knows how they're getting paid? But this group, this hacking group, looks for people and offers them money. Has this signal number that you can call, and if you work for a company as an
Super
insider
legit.
and you want to leak, yeah, and you
Yeah.
want to leak this, this type of thing, yeah. Microsoft, supposedly one of the most secure companies. Kind of scary that they were able to get this done, but this could be a bunch of source code that they really don't care about. Microsoft's starting to open source a lot more things, anyways. I think this
True.
would be a good excuse for Microsoft to turn around and say, "All right, we own GitHub. We're going to toss all this in GitHub. Okay, you released it. Congratulations. This is all stuff that is, quit treating it like it's your secret sauce and make it to where it's kind of the community's thing. I think they'll get farther. Google, I think, is going to have a lot of pressure from politically because of decisions that they made in the last however many years. And I think that Bing, if they can position themselves as being the nice company in all of this, that Microsoft can kind of come out on top and not have people have such negative views. And they've been being open. They've embraced Linux. They've been really open to kind of making their operating systems more open and releasing a lot more source code. So who knows? I don't see this as a big deal yet, but it could, because it wasn't, from what I could tell, personal people's data and really secret insider information, nothing like that.
Yeah. Bing Maps and Cortana. I'm not sure that
I mean,
Microsoft is necessarily having a full on panic attack over a Cortana source code, but who knows? I mean, either way, the fact that it was leaked brings forward many questions about security and things like that. Apparently, they got access to the Azure DevOps source code. And this is the same group that was also behind the Nvidia hack just a few weeks ago, in which
yeah,
they stole driver source code and could have potentially injected malicious stuff into a driver and then published it on a website, and it would have looked like it was the normal driver, and it obviously
yep.
would have had that malicious stuff in there. So this group is Lapsus is their name. They are they're hitting some pretty big targets here, Brian.
Yeah, and sometimes it comes down to these big companies. A lot of times use the same technology between not that they're using the same servers, but they're using the same application to do the same type of thing because they're so big. There's only a couple applications to choose from to do certain things, whether to serve your content or be a portal internally in the company. There's just whatever it is they're using that probably was a vulnerability in it was used to get into their network, or they could have paid somebody. But these companies usually that's why it'll go in groups because maybe there's some particular application that the major top five have. Two of them they were able to bypass and get past all their stuff, and so those are the two that are hacked. I think that's usually why it's kind of groups, or maybe it had something to do with the hack and they were linked somehow. Who knows? But one thing I wanted to mention with Microsoft, uh, I saw an article talking about how they put a watermark if someone bypasses system requirements. Like, so if you're using a processor they don't think you should use, they
Mhm.
put a watermark. Why? If it's a legitimate license of Windows that you own, why would they put a watermark if they don't feel like you're using it on a system that they think you should use it on? I understand you can say this, put a notice up that says this might impact performance that you don't have to ever see again, but why put a watermark? They're not violating any licensing
Yeah,
agreements.
that's
It's not
typically
like they're
where it would say this is an unregistered version of Windows or a
yeah.
non-genuine Windows copy or something like that.
But why is this any? Why do they care? They're running it. I know, but like, don't judge us because this doesn't meet the requirements. Maybe that seems like what
Well,
it is, but just
the
make
first
them pop up a thing that makes it so it can go away.
what I'm thinking of is you've got a lot of kiosks and things like that that run menus and signage in malls
Mhm.
and restaurants, Brian, and a lot of those machines probably don't meet these specs. So even if you put an
No, so they're
application
gonna all have
full
these little
screen,
watermarks on
yeah,
there.
it's still going to have
Yeah,
this little white text at the bottom. That's utterly stupid.
yeah, it's very silly, and I saw that, and it's not so much I care about the watermark, but why would they? And why do they
Hmm.
care? Licensing, I understand. Shame people or people that are going to be streaming Linus Tech Tips constantly is like, okay, we don't license the machines that we demo for you because we're not using them. We install it and then
Yeah.
we format them. So, I'm not licensing it. That's why it says this in the lower right. Okay, fine. So someone doesn't stream on a pirated machine. Go ahead and do that. But why do I care if you don't think my system's powerful enough to run this? Because obviously I'm doing it. Give me one notice, and that's all I need. But why shame me in the lower right hand corner saying that my machine isn't as fast as you think it should be?
Shame.
It just seems
Shame.
so weird.
Shame.
It caught me
Yeah,
off
it
guard.
is
I
very
just
odd.
look at it, I was like, that it just Microsoft, like, what do you think? And just quit it. So
Yeah. Well, seems to show where the priorities might or might not be for old Microsoft. How about that?
yeah. Well, let's talk about then AMD really quick.
Sure.
AMD, one of their new chips, is not going to support overclocking. So the Ryzen 7 58X3D will not support overclocking.
Okay.
And this
Why?
seems to be, well, from what I can see, it has to do with caching. So
Hmm.
they confirmed that the first Ryzen CPUs with 3D V-cache wouldn't support core or cache overclocking during an interview that he had. So, but he did say initial. So it can be that this is something they're working out. I don't know if there will ever be a firmware update or whatever for this, a driver that makes this work. But currently on these first couple chips, because of this new cache, they're not going to be supporting overclocking.
Yeah, and they say that the voltage does not scale above 1.35 volts, which if this, the voltage doesn't go high enough, obviously you won't be able to overclock.
Yeah.
He went on to explain that the technology is yet to mature, so they're still working on it, and that it's been developed with gamers in mind rather than overclockers, which is why they are using putting the extra cache in there, and they wouldn't expect miracles until the technology further matures. So no overclocking on this, no overclocking, but more cache, which they claim will help the traditional gamer, rather than the traditional overclocker. Not that and obviously there is some crossover in those two
Yeah.
sections. If you draw a Venn diagram, I mean, there is people in the middle that are of both ilks.
Yeah.
But for a regular person that's building a computer, Brian, I mean, are you really overclocking? The answer is probably not. I'm not overclocking my chip. It supports it. I'm not overclocking it. If you're building
Usually
a modest,
for your average consumer, it's issues.
yeah, exactly.
Instability, problems. They think that they're pushing a button and putting like super mode. They don't realize they're
It's
putting
not.
like,
It's
okay,
not the.
everything's warming up mode.
It's
Everything's
not the
becoming less
turbo
stable
button
mode.
yeah, it's not the turbo button of the 386 where it's
Yeah, back when you could push it, it would like actually speed up your whole system.
yeah. I don't think I necessarily have a problem with this. It's upfront. They are not shying away and running away from what it is. And for a consumer chip with it, I mean, if you buy an Intel chip that's not a K, it's not overclockable. Why? Oh, because Intel just locks you out of it and charges you more for the K version. I mean, let's be perfectly honest. So, I don't necessarily think I have a problem with this, as long as they make it clear, which it sounds like they've done, and if they think it's
It sounds
generally
they
beneficial.
want to get past this. Yeah,
Yeah,
right. This is more of a technology block for them. It's not because
yeah.
they don't want to. It's because right now it's not developed enough. They can't get enough power through it to really do a real overclock. And so rather than have people break them or, try to overclock them and realize it's not doing what they thought, uh, you know, just remove that feature. And it's going to be the goal is performance and having it playability in games and things like that. They're going the path that's going to lead to having the best performance and everything in the end. Once they get
And
this technology working along with the overclocking.
Yeah, and if that's obviously what ends up happening, the consumer gets the best chip and it's optimized for gaming or whatever they claim, I guess there's probably not an issue there.
Now, so on some of their older video cards, they're trying to figure out whether or not they're going to enable that new super resolution mode, the Radeon super resolution mode that they put out. But I guess they're having some issues with some of the older ones, like the Ryzen 6000 chips, the laptop built-in GPUs.
Mm.
They're trying to figure out whether or not they're going to bother to go back and enable it on those types of systems. How many people are playing games on the old built-in laptops? I mean, back in the day they were. Uh, I guess some people still, especially with these changes that are happening, being able to put Steam on lighter machines because of different technology. Maybe this would become more relevant for an older machine like this.
Very true, and this is always the tough issue from the development standpoint is you come out with new technology, but people are still using old chips. How do you
Yep.
go back and handle that? And there's just a lot
Yep.
of interesting things with that. It's got to be very tough to be developing in this environment right now with the sheer level of backwards compatibility isn't the word to use, but with the sheer level of things that are on the market right now and having to, I watched an interesting video from may have been a Linus Tech Tips video from a couple of days ago. It was talking about DirectX, Brian, and they were going through some older cards that were DirectX 12 supported, which came out with Windows. DirectX 12 came out with Windows 10, maybe? Or maybe it was Windows 7. I think it was Windows 10.
Yeah.
And with that, the card says DirectX 12 compatible. Well, DirectX 12 has had significant updates inside of DirectX 12. They've had 4 or 5 big feature updates within DirectX 12. So you've got a card that is technically DirectX 12 compatible because it met the bare minimum requirements at the time. Well, at the time it
Back
was.
in the day.
Well, and it was compatible. But as they've updated their back-end systems, all the things that handle 3D and physics inside of DirectX, those cards have become not compatible. And that as a developer, you build your card with what you know is available at the time. And then 5 or 6 years later, it's no longer the case. And that's just got to be incredibly tough and difficult to deal with.
Well, I think their problem was they never versioned it out. That we should not be on still DirectX 12. We should be on 13, 14.
Well, they
15,
tend to do it like with
else.
They tend to do it with copies of Windows. So each time there's a new Windows, they update the version.
But they've
had
DirectX 12 out a while. I mean,
since Windows 10.
12 here. Well, but I think before that. Are you sure it's Windows 10? Because
I'm pretty sure it is.
I thought it's been around since before Windows 10. But either way, they've had it out for a while, and if they're going to do something that breaks compatibility with the early specs of DirectX 12, then they need to put out a DirectX 13 or a 12.5 and then say we're compatible with 12.5 on.
But see,
whatever they want to do.
They do that. They do release those subversions, but it's still DirectX 12. So if you've got an older
GPU, there's
not
an easy way for most people to know
that's
in the old version. They just see DirectX 12 on there.
Yeah, precisely. And DirectX 12 came out with Windows 10 on July 29th, 2015. So it's been out for, a hot minute at this point. But I just thought it kind of worked into this conversation about trying to figure out what to do with older cards and compatibility. It was an interesting video. If you haven't watched it, I'd recommend that you do that. See if I can find the title of it.
Well,
it's called.
Let's talk.
It's called "You're Too Old to Game." It came out came out yesterday on the 21st.
I feel that.
Too
I
old to
feel that
game. Yeah.
inside.
Yes.
I'm too old to game.
Yeah. There you go. It was directed towards you, Brian. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Well, hey, Nvidia, they are releasing what they call the super chip. I think this is
Can't
pretty
wait to get
new.
my
Did you
hands
see
on
that?
one.
The performance seems to be pretty big because there's been just a big push with all AMD, Nvidia, Intel for performance lately, and Nvidia introduced this new Grace CPU, and if you look at it, it has 144 high performance cores, 1 terabyte per second of memory, doubles performance, energy efficiency for server chips. So,
Hmm.
I mean, performance wise, they're making it to where it works with half the power, or if it truly doubles that, and it goes twice as fast. That's a no brainer for when you're running servers and you're running a data center where your power bill's gigantic. This doubles what you can do, or at least, and then there's heating and power and things that changes. This is huge. So this is kind of pushed towards. They have some that are pushed towards this data center CPU type of thing, but they're doing a CPU platform. And I don't know if this is more server, or are we going to see more private chips coming out from this? Because I mean, it doesn't. This isn't Intel. It's not AMD. Are we going to see the like motherboards for consumer stuff coming out for these, or are they going to fit in any? I mean, it'd have to be its own architecture. So
Yeah.
that's one thing. It's pretty new. I'm looking. It looks like a lot of server stuff, but the technology is pretty big. I am curious if this is going to interchange, and the same kind of performance is going to be available for gaming applications. Because sometimes with server things, when they're doing certain types of processing, it can go fast. Will this carry over to things like doing 3D and doing a lot of the things that we see video cards doing, or Bitcoin mining? Is this going to be something that Bitcoin miners are going to really go for? But they said it has the highest performance, best memory bandwidth, and it uses the Nvidia software platform all in one chip. And they said it's really also focusing towards AI,
Yeah, which just makes
data
sense
analytics,
because they've got
yeah.
those quote unquote GPUs already that they sell that are AI, PCIe AI chips that do not have they don't have graphics outputs. They're just for AI and things like that, using the CUDA core as a processor.
And I think this is kind of using some previously built infrastructure that they use, like some of their video chips for, because they talk a lot about their software stack, including like the RTX NVIDIA HPC, that it's going to run on all these different software stacks. So it sounds like they have a pretty big infrastructure that they already have for doing supercomputing and things like that. And this is just their new big chip that they're throwing on top of all of it. I've not heard of it. I've not heard of any of their other like big mass computing things.
I've seen a
little
little
bit. We
bit
do have
about
2
them.
links that have a lot of information.
Yeah, there's no really general use case for it for consumers, so it tends to be pretty under the radar. I know I've watched a couple. I know Gamers Nexus. I watched a video they did on it. I think Jay's 2 Cents or one of those other guys did one on it as well. And speaking of Nvidia, Brian, they have reportedly told their partners that they have found a way to lower manufacturing costs up in the neighborhood of potentially 12%. So they have announced that they were able to save some costs on the production of these cards, and these lower manufacturing costs are going to help third parties like Zotac and EVGA and other Nvidia partners to sell these Nvidia GPUs at a lower cost to consumers. So it's not going to be something that happens immediately, but over time, as more of these cards get on the market, and as Nvidia has found a cost savings in between 8 and 12%, it's something that could potentially lower the MSRP of some of these cards and make them more affordable as they make their way to the market. So I wonder what they could have found. That 12%,
that's what I was wondering.
That's a lot. 12% means something. You retooled something pretty heavy in your manufacturing process. Exactly. And
seems like the price of everything has gone up lately. it's kind of hard to believe that they have actually lowered it 8 to 12% when the cost of everything has gone up at least 8 to 12%.
Yeah, well,
So
yeah, inflation's sitting
very
at
impressive. Makes you wonder if
7.9%.
the economy weren't how it is right now, if they would have had like a major and drastic savings, like with whatever they have been working on to make this possible. I wonder if it would have been much more if we wouldn't have had to have inflation where it is right now.
Yeah. So pretty cool. Don't know exactly when or how we'll see it. It's still going to be upon
Oh, PH
the.
is saying that they're using AI to cut down probably on their manufacturing costs, probably automating a lot of the manual, because you got to think on some of they used to do it where they'd actually have people sitting there and placing the chips sometimes in the board, and then it would
There's no way
the
they're doing that
machine, it
now
would
with the
press.
size, with the
That's
nanometer
what I'm
of the
saying.
chips. Yeah.
Exactly. I bet now they've got it to where they just got the automation so fast where it's like just putting them together as fast as they can get them.
Yeah. So again, it will still be incumbent on the third parties like EVGA and Zotac and other companies that make these cards to then pass that on to the consumer. There's no indication
Yeah.
whether they will, but could make getting a 30 series card a little bit easier potentially,
More
or maybe a
doable,
little
yeah.
bit cheaper. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's talk about this, Brian. Fortnite. We haven't talked about old
Yes.
Fortnite in a hot minute.
A little
As
while.
you know, I'm a huge Fortnite fan. I play it morning, noon, and night. I can't get enough Fortnite.
Yeah.
But they have announced that for the next 8 days, they have turned off. They are going to and have turned off their building in the default mode. A no build mode is something that had been suggested plenty of times. But as of right now, you're not able to build in Fortnite, which makes it very similar to every other BR that's on the market with no building.
Yeah. Well, and they also have added vaulting. So they have it to where, okay, there's no building. So because that was one way that you could get on top of roofs and ledges and things like that. Now they have it to where you can do some sort of go up to the ledge, jump, and you can pull yourself up. They also have various things like gloves that allow you to, the spider gloves that allow you to fling and swing yourself around the map. So there's still a lot of ways to get around. They've added vehicles that are like buses, and they've changed it quite a bit. And I think one thing that Epic has done a really good job of is getting people used to change in their game every single season. Drastically changing enough so people don't complain when you change something. Because imagine in half the games that we've played heavily, if they would have changed a major feature like this far into development, or with the game, something that a lot of the hardcore players, that's what makes them somewhat good at this game, is the fact that they have the ability to quickly build. But you know what? It's been holding them back from being truly equal from platform to platform has been the building, because you can't build as fast on a phone. You can't build as fast on a controller.
But on the flip side, without building, does Fortnite really hold up as a decent game? Does it have good enough gunplay? Does it have a good enough PvP system without the building to still stand the test of time? Or was the building kind of I guess maybe crutch would be the word to use for other subpar gameplay mechanics? I don't know. I haven't played it. I'm going to have to play it because now I might actually be able to be somewhat competitive. So I'll go ahead and download that. But it's very interesting to see if the game will still be able to hold up. It doesn't have good enough mechanics on everything else, or was building just kind of leveling the playing field out where it didn't really matter how good the gunplay was because there was so much other stuff going on at the same time.
Now they did with the previous patch. So the previous pretty big release before this of the season, they did change the gun mechanics. They went through and made it feel more like probably what we're used to. So when you go back and play, you haven't played for a long time. So the feeling of the gun mechanics is going to be different. The movement's going to be different. It's going to be a very different experience for you. And I think that they're going to start bringing in more of this kind of story, single player, mixed content of that original story mode game where you're kind of defending Save the World, or is that what it's called? Save the World, I think.
Yeah.
I think with that one, you're going to start seeing more and more of those features brought in and put into Fortnite because they've been starting to give that one away, because you still have to buy it, but they've been giving away with certain packs and things like that. And I think they're just kind of getting more and more people to own it. But I do think that they're going to bring some of those features into the regular Fortnite and quit making that a paid for game because they've been starting to bring in these little, single player type of quests and everything else. I think they do have a big vision that they're moving forward. And I think this is just one of the steps in it. Make this a game mode so people aren't attached to it. It's not Fortnite. It's a game mode of Fortnite. You can turn building on. You can turn it off. It's not Fortnite.
I will be downloading it this week, and I will report back next Tuesday at this same time with how my lovely experience went. I'm sure I'll be very competitive in playing Fortnite. Brian, let's round out the show today talking about, we mentioned at the beginning, New World. This is Amazon's big project that they have been working on for many, many years, and they have announced their 2022 roadmap, which will include a variety of things. They've got it broken down into essentially 3 seasons: spring, which is what we would kind of be in now, summer, and then autumn. For the spring, in terms of their content roadmap, they're going to be working on the Tempest Heart expansion, a new weapon, as well as a 3v3 PvP arena and a PvP reward track. So that is some of the things that they're going to be working on in the springtime frame to have out in the game. As we turn our attention to summer, they are going to have the Barnacles and Black Powder expedition that will be in the game, the Expedition Group Finder, and I guess they're going to have some big summer event. Those will all be coming in the summer content patch. And then in autumn, there's a bunch of things in here, including the Brimstone Sands Territory, the Enid Expedition, a new weapon, including which is going to be the Great Sword, leaderboards, which brought me all the way back to H1Z1, leaderboards taking forever to get put into a game.
Hopefully it doesn't trip them up too much.
Yeah, the Night Vale Hollow event, probably in relation to Halloween and something or the other, and a Turklen 2022 event. So this is some of the things that they're working on. But this is, each of these includes a new expedition and some pretty big things. When you talk about a group finder, PvP arena, leaderboards, and things like that, these are some big things that they are bringing to New World and should have out by the end of the year if everything goes as planned.
And I think they need to keep doing this. I just think they need to keep spring, if this is how they want it, spring, summer, autumn, and then I'm sure they'll have winter, but fall, winter, spring, back. Just continue to where you just keep putting out content, because that's the thing for an MMO that you need. You need to have quests, and if you're not going to have, well, I'm sure they're just going to do big DLCs every once in a while and have something that expands the world. But if they're not going to be doing individual DLCs that expand the world, then make it to where this is continually expanding your world, to where a new player, sees this huge amount of content, that they don't realize it's grown over time, but it's been them just constantly putting these updates, and it's made a big game that then is considered an MMO because it's big enough.
Yeah. So really kind of tying the bow on everything. We're kind of bringing it back to that original Guild Wars topic with the expansions and things like that, keeping players there with content. Looks like New World is moving full steam ahead on that.
Very good. Well, we ready to roll out of here? Is there anything else you want to cover before we go?
No, I think I'm good. Is there anything else that you want to bring up?
Nope, I am good. And next week, hey, we'll let you know whether it's a boy or girl. Looking forward to that. If you want to get me,
I'm not normally.
I'll let you know before the show.
No,
I'll let you know.
No, you don't. I want you to. You can tell me live on the air. That's fine.
Okay.
But when I say this, I'm not being sarcastic. I'm genuinely excited. I'm genuinely excited to find it.
Yeah.
I'm not. This isn't me being facetious or anything.
I'm
very much looking forward to that.
And the funny thing is, my wife's family, they've been harassing her, saying, "Well, would you tell us? Will you please tell us?" My family has been really good about it. We just said we're not going to tell them that. So they've been. My mom, we were trying to trick her into kind of asking us today. She's like, "No, I'll wait. I don't need to know." That
is funny.
But all right. if you want to find me at Brian Aldridge on Gab, Parler, Getter, and whatever things coming up. And if you want to check out my blog, biteoftech.com. But go to our website, infectionpodcast.com. Especially if you want to get a hold of us, just go to the right hand that says join our server on Discord. If you do that, we've got a lot of ARC servers going, a big ARC community that plays on 10 different instances. They're all networks, so you can go between the different instances. Pretty cool. If you want to submit news topics that you think we should be covering, just go to the news channel and put a link in there, or questions or whatever it is that you want us to discuss. But that's a way that you can be a part of the show. We have a politics channel and all kinds of other things that you can be a part of. If you want to watch the show, you can do that through Twitch, YouTube, BitChute, or DLive. And then if you want to, now you can watch those live or recorded. If you want to listen after the fact, we can do that through the podcast. And that's the lower right-hand side. We've got, for whatever kind of platform you might want to use, links for that. If you are going to listen, I encourage you to go to the particular episode that you're going to listen to and click on there, because there's links for videos, articles, all the different things that we refer to during the live show. We have links for each of those on that page. So really useful if you're going to listen and maybe you want to catch a video that we showed. If you want to support us, you can do that through the support tab up top. We've got infectionpodcast.com/support. We're Subscribe Star, Twitch, YouTube, Amazon, all kinds of different ways to support us. Just click, and everything you do hopefully will lead to an in-person convention someday when the world kind of wakes up and gets normal again.
Yes, fingers crossed on that. I want to thank our friend Falcon Rain, who hit us up with the 35-month resubscribe 4 days ago after we wrapped up last week's show. So, Falcon, thank you very much. It is greatly appreciated. Brian, as always, thanks for all you do on the prep of the show, and very much looking forward to episode 376, next week's episode of Infection. So, thanks, Brian. We'll catch up with you next week.
Very good. Yep, see you then.
Alrighty, folks. Well, thank you for joining us, listening to our various antics here over the past hour. If you'd like to check out my antics on a day-to-day basis, you may not know, I host a 3-hour morning news talk show here in southeastern North Carolina. You can check that out by visiting my website, nickcraig.com. If you missed any portion of this show, hey, maybe you want to check out the roadmap for New World. You can visit our website, infectionpodcast.com. Thank you so much for joining us, everybody. Have a great week. We will see you next time.